After studying this module, you shall be able to understand the definition of organizational behavior, know about the levels of analysis, identify the goals of organizational behavior, examine the forces that affect the organizations. Introduction: Organizations and organizational behavior. The Hawthorne studies stimulated OB researchers to study the impact of psychological factors on organizations. In his 1931 book, Human Problems of an Industrial Civilization, Elton Mayo advised managers to deal with emotional needs of employees. The human relations movement, an outgrowth of the Hawthorne studies, influenced OB researchers to focus on teams, motivation, and the actualization of individuals' goals within organizations. The Second World War prompted a shift in the field as it turns its attention to large-scale logistics and operations research. There was a renewed interest in rationalist approaches to the study of organizations. In the 1960s and 1970s, the field became more quantitative and produced such ideas as bounded rationality, the informal organization, and resource dependence. Contingency theory, institutional theory, and organizational ecology also emerged. Starting in the 1980s, cultural explanations of organizations and organizational change became areas of study. Informed by anthropology, psychology, and sociology, qualitative research became more acceptable in organizational behavior. An organization is a structured social system consisting of groups and individuals working together to meet some agreed upon objectives. They consist of people who as individuals or in groups strive to attain common goals. The field of organizational behavior deals with human behavior in organizations. Its approach is multidisciplinary that tries to understand human behavior in organizational settings by systematically studying individual, group and organizational processes. Now we will give the definition. Effective organizational behavior is the bedrock on which effective organizational action rests. Long-term competitive advantage comes from the rich portfolio of individual and team-based competencies of an organizational employees, managers and leaders. Organizational behavior is an interdisciplinary field dedicated to the systematic study and careful application of knowledge about how people as individuals and as groups act within organizations. By definition, organizational behavior is both research and application oriented. As a discipline, a large number of research studies and conceptual developments are constantly adding to its knowledge base, and as an applied science, that information about effective practices in one organization is being extended to many others. Three basic levels of analysis in organizational behavior are individual, group and organizational. It is useful to study behavior of individuals within an organization. Organizational behavior is also helpful for the understanding of the complexities involved in interpersonal relations when two people interact. At the next level, organizational behavior is useful for examining the dynamics of relationship within small groups, both formal teams and informal groups. Further, when there is a coordinated effort between two or more groups, managers become interested in the intergroup relations that emerge. Lastly, organizations can also be seen as whole systems that have inter-organizational relationships. Organizational behavior is concerned with the study of what people do in an organization and how that behavior affects the performance of the organization. Now we will talk about the goals of organizational behavior. Like all other sciences, organizational behavior has certain specific objectives. The first of which is to describe systematically how people behave under a variety of conditions. Realization of this objective allows managers to communicate about human behavior at work using a common language. The second goal is to understand the why of people's behavior. The field of organizational behavior needs to be justified, and hence it should not only talk about employee behavior but the reasons behind it. After understanding the subtle nuances and explanations behind employee behavior, We move on to the next goal of organizational behavior, which is predicting future behavior of employees. The ability to forecast an employee's level of efficiency, productivity, dedication and regularity can be quite helpful from the viewpoint of recruitments, assessments, job specifications, enhancements and promotions. On the other hand, ineffective, tardy and disruptive employee behavior, if predicted accurately, can be countered by taking preventive action. The last goal of organizational behavior is to influence and develop human activity at work based on interpretation and application of organizational research. It is expected of managers to develop viable methods of performance improvement, conducive behavior at work, optimum skill development, efficiency and teamwork through understanding and application of concepts like motivation, conflict resolution, communication, leadership, etc. Organizational behavior comes to the rescue of managers to develop the ability to bring about betterment in the workplace through effective employee behavior. Organizational behavior is applicable in all types of professions and organizations, whether government, private or service. Whatever the organization is, there is an imperative need to understand, predict and develop work conducive human behavior. And now we'll talk about the forces that affect the organizations. There are a multiple array of forces that affect the organizations. These can be classified into 4 areas: people, structure, technology and the environment. All the stated 4 areas work in relation with each other and ultimately influence organizational behavior. For any organization to achieve its goals, it has to have people to fulfill its mission statements. However, without a formal structure where hierarchies, duties, roles and ways of functioning are not specified, the organization would become dysfunctional. Without the use of technology, the people in the organization would not be able to function. Finally, all the 3 forces, namely people, structure and technology, are influenced and get influenced by the environment in which the organization operates. We'll first talk about now the people that affect the organization. The internal social system of the organization constitutes people. This internal social system consists of individuals and groups, which further may be big, small, formal, informal, official or unofficial. Groups are dynamic. They are formed, change and disintegrate. The important point is that people are thinking, feeling and reacting beings who work to achieve their aims. Organization comes into existence to serve people rather than the other way around. The present organizations are very different from organizations of yesterday. Organizations nowadays encourage and work towards getting culturally diverse workforce. Diverse workforce presents both opportunities and challenges to the organization. The implications of diversity lie in the fact that people come from different educational and cultural backgrounds. Apart from individual differences in their talents and perspectives, they have unique value systems, interests and lifestyles. Hence, the organizations need to use these unique characteristics to their benefit and also be prepared to adapt to them. There is a major shift in the thinking and behaving patterns of the workforce. In order to survive, the organizations need to change their management practices. There are latest developments which emphasize leadership abilities, motivational techniques, employee counseling and empowerment. In managing human resources, managers have to deal with first, individual employee who are expected to perform the task allotted to them. Second, dyadic relationships such as superior-subordinate interactions. Third, groups who work as teams and have the responsibility for getting the job done. Fourth, people outside the organization system such as customers and government officials. Now we'll talk about the structure that influences the organization. Structure implies the formal relationship and use of people in organizations. People in different jobs are required to accomplish the multifarious activities of an organization. However, the people in different roles need to be connected in some structured way so that there is coordination in the organization. These interconnections present the organization with challenges of cooperation, negotiation and decision making. Nowadays, we have more flatter organizations with relatively fewer hierarchical positions. This ensures relatively less hurdles in implementation of decisions and also cuts across costs. The structures of organizations which have mergers, acquisition and new ventures have completely different and complex structures. The internet and modern telecommunication technology have given rise to virtual teams and organizations. Here, locations, infrastructure facilities, and time zones do not pose any constraint on the organization's competence. There are various types of structure. The first one is the pre-bureaucratic structures. Pre-bureaucratic structures lack standardization of tasks. This structure is most common in smaller organizations and is best used to solve simple tasks. The structure is totally centralized. The strategic leader makes all key decisions and most communication is done by one-on-one conversations. It is particularly useful for new business as it enables the founder to control growth and development. The second is bureaucratic structures. Weber gives the analogy that fully developed bureaucratic mechanism compares with other organizations exactly as does the machine compare with the non-mechanical modes of production. Precision, speed, unambiguity, strict subordination, reduction of friction and of material and personal costs, these are raised to the optimum point in the strictly bureaucratic administration. Bureaucratic structures have a certain degree of standardization. They are better suited for more complex or larger scale organizations, usually adopting a tall structure. The tension between bureaucratic structures and non-bureaucratic is echoed in Burns and Stocker's distinction between mechanistic and organic structures. Bureaucratic structures have many levels of management ranging from senior executives to regional managers all the way to department store managers. Since there are many levels, decision-making authority has to pass through more layers than flatter organizations. Bureaucratic organization has rigid and tight procedures, policies and constraints. These kinds of structures are reluctant to adapt or change what they have been doing since the company started. Organizational charts exist for every department and everyone understands who is in charge and what their responsibilities are for every situation. Decisions are made through an organized process and a strict command and control structure is present at all times. In bureaucratic structures, the authority is at the top and information is then flowed from top to bottom. This causes for more rules and standards for the company and operational processes watched with close supervision. Some advantages for bureaucratic structures for top level managers are that they have a tremendous control over organizational structure decisions. This works best for managers who have a command and control style of managing. Strategic decision making is also faster because there are fewer people it has to go through to approve. Some advantages in bureaucratic structures are it can discourage creativity and innovation in the organization. This can make it hard for a company to adapt to changing conditions in the marketplace. The third structure is the post-bureaucratic structure. The term post-bureaucratic structure is used in two senses in the organizational literature, one generic and one much more specific. In the generic sense, the term post-bureaucratic is often used to describe a range of ideas that developed since the 1980s that specifically contrast themselves with Weber's ideal type of bureaucracy. This may include total quality management, culture management, and matrix management amongst others. None of these, however, has left behind the core tenets of bureaucracy. Hierarchies still exist, authority is still Weber's rational, legal type, and the organization is still rule-bound. Hexer, arguing along these lines, describes them as cleaned up bureaucracies rather than a fundamental shift from bureaucracy. Gaidyun Kunda, in his classic study of culture management at Tech, argued that the essence of bureaucratic control, the formalization, codification and enforcement of rules and regulations does not change in principle. It shifts focus from organizational structure to organization's culture. The fourth type is the functional structure. A functional organizational structure is a structure that consists of activities such as coordination, supervision, and task allocation. The organizational structure determines how the organization performs or operates. The term organizational structure refers to how the people in an organization are grouped and to whom they report. One traditional way of organizing people is by function. Some common functions within an organization include production, marketing, human resources, and accounting. This organizing of specialization leads to operational efficiency, where employees become specialists within their own realm of expertise. The most typical problem with the functional organizational structure is, however, that communication within the company can be rather rigid, making the organization slow and inflexible. Therefore, lateral communication between functions become very important so that information is disseminated not only vertically but also horizontally within the organization. Communication in organizations with functional organizational structures can be rigid because of the standardized ways of operation and the high degree of formalization. The next structure is the matrix structure. The matrix structure groups employees both by function and product. This structure can combine the best of both separate structures. A matrix organization frequently uses teams of employees to accomplish work in order to take advantage of the strengths as well as make up for the weaknesses of functional and decentralized forms. An example would be a company that produces two products, product A and product B. Using the matrix structure, this company would organize functions within the company as follows: Product A sales department, Product A customer service department, Product A accounting, Product B sales department, Product B customer service department, Product B accounting department. Matrix structure is amongst the purest of organizational structures, a simple lattice emulating order and regularity demonstrated in nature. The next is the weak functional matrix. A project manager with only limited authority is assigned to oversee the cross-functional aspects of the project. The functional managers maintain control over the resources and project areas. Balanced functional matrix. A project manager is assigned to oversee the project. Power is shared equally between the project manager and the functional managers. It brings the best aspects of functional and projectized organizations. However, this is the most difficult system to maintain as the sharing of power is a delicate proposition. Strong project matrix. A project manager is primarily responsible for the project. Functional managers provide technical expertise and assign resources as needed. Matrix structure is only one of the three major structures. The other two are functional and project structure. Matrix management is more dynamic than functional management in that it is a combination of all the other structures and allows team members to share information more readily across task boundaries. It also allows for specialization that can increase depth of knowledge in a specific sector or segment. Technology. The world is facing a dramatic shift from a manufacturing to a service industry. Technology empowers people and affects the tasks and the ways in which they are performed. It was a bearing on working relationships as well as on quality of work. The internet revolution has had major impact on organizations. Internet, which is the global network of computers, software, cables, servers and routers, is here to stay as a business tool. It can radically and impressively alter any industry or activity that depends heavily on the flow of information. Increased use of automated control systems, robots, machinery and equipment, computer hardware and software are the call of the day. However, these technological advancements pose a challenge to an organizational behavior practitioner in terms of maintaining a balance between technical and social systems. We can classify technology into three categories: long link technology, mediating technology and intensive technology. Long link technology, in this the tasks are broken into a number of sequential and interdependent steps where the outputs of one unit become the output of the next. For example, assembly line. This facilitates to have high volume of output and efficiency. This technology calls for mechanistic structures with high level of specialization, standardization and formalization. The second is mediating technology. This links different parties who need to be brought together in a direct or indirect way. For example, banks use mediating technology to lend money to borrowers by taking money from depositors. The third is intensive technology. It is used when a group of specialists are brought together to solve complex problems using a variety of technologies. For example, in the hospital, parties are treated with the help of experts drawn from different fields of specialization. Coordination of the different activities is achieved in the system primarily through mutual adjustment among those engaged in solving the problem in the different units. Organic structures would fit in this system using intensive technology. Now let's talk about environment, the last force that affects an organization. Each organization has an internal and an external environment. Every organization is part of a larger system. It does not exist in isolation. The larger system consists of many other elements such as government, other organizations, and the family. Rapid globalization, apart from other factors such as expectations of improved quality of goods and services at acceptable prices, corporate social responsibility, unionization, etc., pose a challenge to organizations. No single organization can escape being influenced by the external environment. There are two distinct sets of environment. The first one, specific environment. This includes the suppliers, customers, competitors, government agencies, employees, unions, political parties, etc. The second is the general environment. It includes the economic, political, cultural, technological and social factors in which the organization is embedded. Organizations are embedded in an environment within which they operate. Some of the external factors may be completely beyond the control of the organization to change, such as the cultural, social or economic or government aspects. However, many of the other factors such as sizing up the market, being in tune with the technological changes that take place, being a step ahead of competition, or stocking up and buffering supplies when certain materials are likely to be in short supply, are all within the control of the organization. Effectively managing these situations, however, requires constant and close vigilance, adaptability to changes, and being able to manage problematic situations through good decision making. Those organizations which are proactive, that is, watchful and take action before crisis situations occur, and can manage their external environment, are more effective than those that are reactive, that is, caught off guard and wake up after facing the crisis situation and are unable to cope effectively. We will now talk about the fit between environment and structure. Firms facing a fast changing or turbulent external environment are very effective when they had more organic structure which provided flexibility for quick changes to be made within the internal environment of the system. Similarly, firms which operated in a relatively stable external environment were very effective when they had more mechanistic structure. This mechanistic structure allowed the system to operate in a predictable manner since authority, responsibility, procedures and rules were clearly specified. Now let's summarize the module. First, organizational behavior is the systematic study and careful application of knowledge about how people as individuals and groups act in the organizations. Second, organizational behavior is a relatively young discipline that deals with human behavior in organizations. The central characteristic of which are that is a scientific field studying individuals, groups and organizational processes. Third, it is interdisciplinary in nature and it is used as the basis for enhancing organizational effectiveness and individual well-being. Organizational behavior is a very important area of study as its concepts helps us to predict and understand organizational events, adopt more accurate theories of reality and influence organizational events. It cuts across all areas of organizational functioning. After all, it's a proven fact that employees need to be motivated and satisfied, communication has to be fair, teams need to function effectively, and jobs need to be designed effectively for the organization to have a smooth sailing. Clearly defined areas, goals, and forces of organizational behavior make it easy to understand the complex and dynamic nature of organizations. Next, its primary goals are to make the employers more effective at describing, understanding, predicting, and controlling human behavior. The key elements to consider are people, structure, technology, and the external environment.
An organization is a social system because it consists of people as individuals or in groups who work together to attain a common goal. Its multidisciplinary approach permits a systematic study of individual, group, and organizational processes. Here is a definition of organizational behavior by Hellriegel and Slocum. Organizational behavior is the systematic study about how people, as individuals and as groups, act within organizations. It is both research and application oriented. The three basic levels of analysis in organizational behavior are the individual, group, and organizational. Organizational behavior is concerned with the individuals as employees, as groups or team members, and the broader organizational processes. Like all other sciences, organizational behavior has certain specific objectives. The first one being a systematic description of how people behave under a variety of conditions. The second goal is to understand the why of people's behavior. Another goal is to influence and develop human activity at work. The need to study organizational behavior arises out of the desire to understand organizational events, influence them, and predict their future occurrences. Furthermore, conducting organizational research can be another motive. A multiple array of forces affect the organizations. These can be classified into four areas: people, structure, technology, environment. People are the most important resource in any organization. It is important to study them very carefully as their behavior influences the working of any organization. They are studied as individuals and as groups. The structure of an organization is the number of levels or the hierarchical order of that organization. Nowadays, we have more flatter organizations with relatively fewer hierarchical positions. This facilitates communication and enhances accountability. Technology has dramatically changed the way in which organizations work. Sharing information at all levels in the organizations and across countries has become faster and efficient. However, caution needs to be exercised, keeping in mind the delicate balance which has to be maintained between the technical and human systems. No organization can exist in isolation. Apart from the internal environment of the organization, the external environment influences it in a very important way. The current market situation, economy, demand supply of goods, unemployment, political scenario, among other things, contribute as external environment to the organization. What you can see here are the key forces in an organization. These are people, environment, structure, and technology. The summary is as follows. Organizational behavior is the systematic study and careful application of knowledge about how people as individuals and as groups act in organizations. Its primary goals are to make the employers, that is the managers, more effective at describing, understanding, predicting and controlling human behavior. The key elements to consider are people, structure, technology, and the environment.